Jake Cameron grew up on the bustling streets of San Francisco, in a high-rise apartment building where the view from his balcony was more skyscrapers. As a kid, he'd always felt like a fish out of water among the corporate suits and business meetings that occupied the streets below. When he discovered surfing at 16, he felt he'd finally found his calling. The ocean waves brought him solace, pulling him farther away from the urban jungle. His family never understood it. His father was a prominent lawyer, his mother a book editor. They had plans for him to follow in their sophisticated footsteps. But Jake, with his sun-bleached hair and an ever-present tan, only ever really felt at home on a board. Now in his 30s, Jake worked as a freelance writer, which gave him the flexibility to surf whenever he wanted and travel wherever the waves took him. He didn't have the responsibilities of a traditional job, a mortgage, or a family to hold him back. Every few months, he'd pick a new exotic location, pack up his things, and chase the perfect wave. This month's choice was a quaint seaside town in Spain, renowned for its beautiful beaches and outstanding waves. Jake had managed to score an amazing deal on a seaside villa on Airbnb. The photos online showcased panoramic ocean views and easy beach access. It was perfect. The villa was more breathtaking in person. Its rustic exterior hid a modern interior with all the conveniences one could want. The balcony provided an uninterrupted view of the vast, shimmering ocean, and the sound of the waves was a constant lullaby. The first few days were heaven. Jake woke up early, had a quick breakfast, and spent hours surfing. In the evenings, he'd cook and enjoy his meal while watching the sunset. It felt like he had found a slice of paradise. It was on the fourth night when things took a turn. Jake returned from a late surf session to find the front door ajar. A chill ran down his spine. He knew he'd locked it before he left. He stepped inside cautiously. The living room looked untouched, but as he moved further into the villa, the once familiar spaces felt eerie. He noticed his laptop, camera, and some cash missing from his bedroom. His mind raced. He had heard stories of local burglars targeting tourists, but he never thought he'd become a victim. He reported the theft to the police, who promised to investigate, but didn't seem too hopeful about recovering his belongings. That night, Jake struggled to sleep. Every little sound, the creak of the wooden floors, the rustle of leaves outside, made him jumpy. He felt exposed, violated. He considered cutting his vacation short, but the thought of letting the burglars win angered him. So he decided to stay, but took extra precautions, like setting up a makeshift alarm using some bottles and string. 2 days passed without incident. Jake's confidence returned. He assumed the thief had moved on to another target. But on the seventh night, as he was watching a movie, he heard a soft thud outside the sliding door that led to the balcony. He muted the TV and strained to listen. Another thud. Gripped by an icy dread, Jake slowly approached the door. He peered outside, but the inky darkness hid any potential threat. He turned on the outside lights, and his heart nearly leaped out of his chest. A man, with a cloth mask concealing his face, was inches away from the glass, his hand raised, ready to strike. Jake stumbled backward, panic seizing him. He bolted to the front door, but to his horror, he found another masked man trying to pick the lock. He was trapped. Adrenaline fueled him. He sprinted to the kitchen and grabbed the heaviest pan he could find. As the man from the balcony slid open the door, Jake swung the pan with all his might, connecting with the intruder's head. The man crumpled to the ground. Without pausing, Jake rushed to the front door, where the second man was now inside. They locked eyes, both assessing each other. With a roar, the masked man lunged at Jake, who swung the pan again. But this time, the man was prepared. He ducked, sending Jake off balance. In seconds, the intruder had him pinned to the ground, a knife gleaming in his hand. But Jake wasn't ready to give up. He kicked and thrashed, managing to knock the knife away. The two wrestled, each trying to gain the upper hand. With one powerful push, Jake sent the man crashing into a shelf. Glass shattered, and the noise was deafening. Suddenly, a shout echoed from outside. "Police! Drop your weapon!" In the ensuing chaos, the second intruder scrambled away, escaping through a window. Jake, panting and covered in bruises, was left in the ransacked living room, surrounded by concerned neighbors and local police. Later, He found out that a neighbor had seen the burglars enter the villa and had called the police. The man Jake had knocked out was arrested, but his accomplice remained at large. Jake's vacation turned into a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. The once idyllic villa now felt like a prison. He packed up and left the very next day, cutting his trip short. Months later, back in San Francisco, he received an email. It contained a picture of the villa, and the message simply read, "Hope you enjoyed your stay." Anna Greenwald, a 28-year-old travel writer with raven black hair and striking blue eyes, had always lived her life chasing the thrill of the unknown. After completing a series of stories on the world's most secluded beaches, Anna decided it was time for something urban. She wanted to experience life in a bustling city, somewhere she could get lost in the crowd. She was not attached, neither to people nor to places. With parents no longer in the world and siblings she barely spoke to, Anna's life was her travel diary and her backpack. The open road was her home, so she did what she always did. She booked her next destination on a whim. Browsing Airbnb, Anna came across an affordable flat in the heart of a teeming European city. The apartment from the pictures looked stylishly decorated with vintage furnishings and boasted views of the historic city center. The landlord, named Roderick, had good reviews, although they seemed oddly sparse in detail. Anna thought nothing of it, hit the book button, and was on her way. Upon arriving, Anna was met by Roderick. He was a thin, wiry man with an unkempt beard and nervous eyes that darted around constantly. He smelled faintly of something acrid and rotten, but Anna attributed it to the old building. "Welcome, Miss Greenwald," Roderick said, his voice trembling as though speaking was an unfamiliar task. "I trust you will find everything to your liking. You're my only guest for the week." Anna smiled, her default response to most situations. "Thank you, Roderick. It looks lovely." She started to turn towards the apartment when Roderick added, "Just one rule. The small storage room at the end of the hall is private. Off limits. Please respect that." Anna nodded, "Of course, not a problem." Over the next few days, Anna explored the city, losing herself in its labyrinthine streets and sampling exotic foods. Every night, she returned to the apartment, write about her day, and then fall into a deep sleep. However, she began to notice peculiar things in the flat. The scent of decay was stronger in certain areas, and she'd occasionally hear faint noises at night. One evening, as she was brushing her teeth, she saw a shadow moving under the bathroom door. When she opened it, no one was there. Anna's innate sense of curiosity began to eat at her, especially about the locked storage room. What was in there that was so private? She decided to take a peek. Finding a set of old lock-picking tools she kept as souvenirs from a previous adventure, Anna cautiously approached the door. But just as she touched the handle, she heard a voice. "Lost something, Miss Greenwald." Anna jumped, dropping the tools. It was Roderick. His figure cast a long, sinister shadow in the dim hallway. "Just curiosity," Anna admitted, trying to sound more daring than she felt. Roderick tilted his head. "Didn't I mention it was off limits?" Anna nodded. "You did, and I'm sorry. I won't touch it again." She expected anger, but Roderick simply chuckled. "Oh, it's quite all right. Everyone gets curious. Just remember the rule." Anna thanked him and rushed to her room, heart pounding. She felt silly for trying to snoop, and even sillier for feeling afraid of her thin landlord. But the feeling of being watched never left her. Over the next few days, Anna felt a growing paranoia. She found her belongings moved or misplaced. Her diary, usually kept on the bedside table, was now in the living room. One evening, she found a small camera hidden in the bathroom ceiling. When she confronted Roderick via message, he played dumb, saying the previous tenant might have left it. Anna wasn't convinced. On her second to last night, Anna decided she needed answers. Armed with her tools, she tried the storage door again. This time, Roderick was not there to stop her. The door creaked open. The smell hit her first, that overwhelming stench of decay. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a single bulb. Along the walls were shelves lined with jars. In them floated what looked like human organs. A collection of eyes, fingers, and worse stared back at her. In the center of the room was a table with what looked like surgical instruments stained with dried blood. Horrified, Anna stumbled back, knocking over a jar. It shattered, and its contents spilled out with a sickening thud. As she tried to flee, she heard Roderick's voice behind her. "Ah, Miss Greenwell, it seems your curiosity has once again led you astray." Anna turned, finding herself face to face with Roderick. He held a gleaming knife. "I thought it might come to this. You seem too adventurous for your own good." Anna, panic mounting, thought quickly. She reached for a nearby jar and hurled it at Roderick. The jar smashed into his face, its contents blinding him temporarily. Using the brief window of opportunity, Anna sprinted from the room. Roderick chased after her, shouting obscenities. Anna ran, heart pounding, toward the exit, but she found the front door locked from the outside. She was trapped. Suddenly, she remembered the fire escape she had seen from the living room window. Racing there, she smashed the window with a chair, climbed out, and began descending. Reaching the ground, Anna ran until she found a police station. The authorities, upon hearing her story, stormed Roderick's flat. Inside, they found evidence of multiple murders. The organs and jars belonged to past tenants, ones who had left seemingly glowing reviews on Airbnb. Those reviews were penned by Roderick himself. As for Roderick, he was nowhere to be found. Authorities suspected he fled, anticipating Anna's escape. Anna left the city shaken, vowing never to return, but one thing haunted her more than the grotesque collection she discovered. Upon retrieving her belongings from the flat, she noticed her diary was open. Inside, written in Roderick's shaky handwriting, was a message. Curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. "I will be seeing you soon, Miss Greenwell." Even now, miles away, Anna felt his eyes on her. The hunt was far from over. Sarah Thompson, a historian of considerable renown, had spent her life in the pursuit of uncovering long-forgotten stories of the past. Her husband, Mark, often joked that Sarah was more comfortable in dusty archives than in their modern suburban home. They had two beautiful children, Lisa and Jake, aged 10 and 8 respectively. Although Sarah's relentless passion for her work frequently took her away from her family, they understood the significance of her research. When Sarah's latest project required her to travel to a mid-sized city on the East Coast, she decided to book a rental rather than stay in a hotel. After hours of scanning popular booking sites, she stumbled upon a listing for a stylish loft on Airbnb that seemed perfect. Loft 21B was a fusion of vintage brick walls and contemporary furniture, a perfect blend for someone like Sarah who appreciated the past but lived in the present. Sarah's stay started normally enough. The loft was even more beautiful in person. The rich wooden floors creaked underfoot, large factory-style windows let in floods of light, and the modern kitchen gleamed with the promise of fresh brewed coffee. She was welcomed by a handwritten note from the owner, saying they hoped she enjoyed her stay and that they were just a call away if she needed anything. On her second evening, after spending the entire day at a nearby archive, Sarah settled into the loft's cozy living room to watch the local news. As the anchorwoman transitioned to a new segment, a familiar image popped onto the screen, an exterior shot of the very building Sarah was in. In today's feature, we revisit the shocking murder of renowned pianist Anthony Fletcher, who was found brutally murdered in his apartment, Loft 21B. The crime, which occurred a year ago, sent shockwaves through the community. The mystery remains unsolved. Sarah's heart raced. She was sitting in a murder scene. She quickly called the Airbnb host, demanding an explanation. The host apologetically revealed that he had purchased the loft at a reduced rate after the incident and had renovated it. Since the crime, no tenants have reported any disturbances, so he thought it was unnecessary to inform Sarah. He offered her a full refund, but with her tight schedule and the loft's proximity to the archives, Sarah decided to stay, though uneasily. Sarah's research didn't originally involve Anthony Fletcher, but with her historian's intrigue piqued, she found herself delving into his life. Fletcher had been an eccentric. He had a small circle of acquaintances and, bizarrely, was rumored to have a habit of recording his everyday activities on audio tapes. Sarah's historical intrigue overcame her initial fear. She wondered if any of those recordings still existed. The idea of listening to the life of this enigmatic pianist was enticing. The following evening, she came across a concealed door in the loft's walk-in closet. Behind it was a treasure trove of cassette tapes. This was it. These were Fletcher's recordings. She found a tape player in the loft, and with bated breath, she played the first tape. The loft was filled with the soothing sound of a piano, followed by Fletcher's voice documenting his day. It was surreal. Sarah felt as if she were eavesdropping on a moment frozen in time. As days turned into nights, Sarah became consumed. She listened to tape after tape, pulled into the orbit of Anthony's world. She heard the humdrum sounds of his life, his interactions with friends, and most hauntingly, his increasing paranoia. "I feel like someone's watching me," Anthony's voice trembled on one tape. "There are strange noises at night, footsteps when there should be none. I checked, there's never anyone there." On another tape, Sarah could hear Anthony confronting someone. A deep voice responded, "Just mind your business, Fletcher." There was aggression, a threat underlying the tone. Sarah's skin prickled with fear. She found herself looking over her shoulder, jumping at shadows. One evening, she heard a knock on the loft door. Opening it, she found a man in his early 50s. He introduced himself as Detective Ramirez, the officer assigned to Fletcher's case. He wanted to know if she'd found anything in the loft that could be of interest. Sarah hesitated but then told him about the tapes. The detective's face turned grim. That night, she decided to listen to the last tape. The recording started normally, but soon she heard a disturbance. There was a struggle, a scream, and then a chilling silence. Sarah was paralyzed with horror. The realization hit her. She had just heard the audio recording of Anthony's murder. The next day, Detective Ramirez visited her again. He had a stern look. "Sarah, you need to be careful. We believe Anthony's murderer knew about those tapes. If he thinks there's evidence on them, he might come after you." Terrified, Sarah decided she'd leave the next morning. She packed her bags and tried to rest, but every noise in the night became a potential threat. Sometime past midnight, there was a creak of a floorboard outside her door. Panic welled up inside her. She grabbed her phone to dial 911, but before she could, the door burst open. Detective Ramirez stood there, his face contorted in anger. "You shouldn't have listened to those tapes," he growled. The realization was a cold shock. The detective, the very man she had trusted, was the murderer. In her fear, Sarah lashed out, knocking a lamp onto Ramirez. He staggered, giving her the opportunity to dash for the door. She screamed for help as she ran down the corridors. Security and police soon swarmed the building. Detective Ramirez was apprehended. The tapes had, unknowingly to Sarah, captured his voice, linking him to the murder. Sarah returned home, her research trip cut short. The terror of the experience haunted her dreams. She found herself intertwined with a dark chapter of a stranger's history, and while she escaped with her life, she forever lost her sense of safety.